as we host our event in partnership with our friends at Democracy Forward, an awesome group that's doing so much to inform the general public and encourage the public. Thank you. I appreciate their involvement with us this evening so that we can provide an update on the collective legal actions that are being taken in support against this Trump administration. So a vital bit of discussion. And again, thank you to our friends at Democracy Forward. This has been a devastating year, to say it mildly. Chaos and terror that's inserted into so many aspects of life, defined by lawless action after lawless action by the Trump administration. Government-sanctioned murder of United States citizens, international war ignited with callous recklessness, and draconian cuts to basic necessities. Those necessities like healthcare and food assistance and housing, affordable housing. This is the reality of where we are. And yet, in spite of all of that, people keep showing up to fight and fight for something better. That persistence was palpable this past weekend. Standing amongst the 9 million people who took to the streets across our great country for the No Kings rallies was nothing short of extraordinary. 9 million people who are fed up, who are angry, who are determined, and rightfully so. I'm right there with you. I share that urgent anger, and I carry that energy with me every single day as I go to work in this fight. It builds the why in the work that we do. I'm also deeply grateful to the thousands of you who have reached out to our office. Your engagement is critical, and I want to continue to hear from you. Sharing your stories, powerful stories, and your ideas is one of the most powerful ways that we can help drive change together. Because at the end of the day, people power is the only way we will win this fight for a much more just tomorrow. No one person, no one representative, or one community can do it alone. It will take all of us, each using our unique voice, expertise, and passion, stepping up to where we can make the greatest impact. And tonight, we're joined by people doing exactly that every day. I'm honored to be here with the dedicated legal team from Democracy Forward, an action group who are leading the charge in the courts, using the law and their expertise to push back against the onslaught of reckless, cruel, and often illegal actions from this administration. And while by no measure foolproof, many of Trump's executive orders and actions have been put on hold by the courts. In Congress, I have been proud to bolster legal efforts by joining my colleagues in signing up and joining with amicus briefs. Congressional Democrats have led briefs to defend a number of items, including protections for immigrants, the rights of transgender Americans, federal funding for government programs like EPA's Solar for All program, and the jobs of dedicated public servants and the integrity of our federal agencies. In the coming days and weeks and months, we expect the courts will continue to hear incredibly important cases that are challenging Trump's actions, including his efforts to undermine EPA's authority to develop science-based rules to reduce climate pollution, his attempt to fire officials at independent agencies without cause, including situations at the Federal Reserve, at Consumer Protection Safety Commission, and our National Labor Relations Board. And tomorrow, as we all know, we're watching that Supreme Court decision, a case that strikes at the constitutional right to birthright citizenship. So the Trump administration isn't letting up, and we need to be ready and able to fight for our rights and our values in these cases and beyond. Tonight, Megha Patel from Democracy Forward will give you a better sense of where things stand and what is next. So thank you again for joining us this evening, and I look forward to the conversation and to answering any questions that you may have. And with that, I'll ask that Mega inform us of some of those latest situations out there. So thank you so much. Thank you, and please thank your peers for the work that you're doing. It is incredibly valuable.
Thank you so much, Congressman Tonko, for the opportunity to join you and for your kind words and your constituents for joining us tonight. My name is Megha Patel, like the Congressman said, and I'm the Senior Policy Manager at Democracy Forward. If you've never heard of us, don't worry, we're a relatively new organization. DF was founded after the 2016 US presidential election to address growing threats to democracy, the rule of law, and social progress. The organization assembled a legal team that took the first Trump administration to court more than 100 times, successfully challenging bad actors and their unlawful policies, shutting down corrupt committees created for special interests, and exposing unfair, unreasonable policies that stripped vulnerable communities of crucial protections. Over the past decade, we have been in courts across the country, pushing back against anti-democratic efforts at the federal, state, and local level. It has been over a year since President Trump's inauguration, and since that time, we have brought together a unique coalition of more than 700 organizations through our Democracy 2025 initiative to address this administration's harmful policies impacting the people in this country. Let me set the stage for tonight's conversation by giving you some top-line numbers. Since President Trump has come into office, the pro-democracy community has filed more than 700 lawsuits against this administration's executive orders and actions. Democracy Forward itself has filed more than 400 legal actions and launched over 250 investigations. Simply put, Democracy Forward and our partner organizations are in court nearly every day. And despite what you may be hearing, the courts are holding their ground, much more than the president or the right-wing media want us to believe. Because while a handful of Supreme Court rulings have been egregious, President Trump is losing in court far more than he is winning. He's losing because a broad cross-section of Americans have sued to stop his power grabs and defend their rights. He's losing because hundreds of federal judges are seeing the facts, reading the law, and siding with the people. He's losing because of America's lower courts. Judges of all stripes, including Trump-appointed judges, have ruled against this administration. The courtroom wins have served to halt or slow executive overreach, protected the civil service, safeguarded education, civil rights, and healthcare, reinstated funding for critical community programs, and congressionally authorized funding for climate and infrastructure projects, and preserved U.S. global leadership. But what does this actually look like? It looks like getting the first nationwide preliminary injunction to stop this administration from freezing funding for all federal programs, fighting to protect SNAP benefits for more than 42 million people in America, despite this administration's efforts to fight back and every turn to avoid feeding people, forcing the release of $6 billion in federal funds for public schools across our nations, winning final judgment to stop of a Dear Colleague letter that would have targeted schools that taught about racism. It looks like blocking the firing of civil servants during the government shutdown and the withholding of funding for direct service providers for survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, including the targeting of lawyers trained to help them. We've successfully protected the healthcare of more than 2.2 million Americans and ensuring members of Congress can conduct oversight at ICE detention centers, as is their duty and statutory right. As the actions of this administration have become increasingly more dangerous, Democracy Forward has been in court to protect basic constitutional rights. I know many of us on this call are deeply concerned about what we are seeing across this country in respect to immigration enforcement and other actions, which is why we continue to challenge it. On behalf of advocates and non-citizens, DF and our partner organizations are taking action to stop. unlawful arrests at courthouses, which have stripped people of basic due process rights afforded under U.S. immigration law and the Fifth Amendment. Immigration officials from entering houses of worship to conduct immigration enforcement operations. From the IRS from sharing data on millions of taxpayers with ICE. We have also been on the front lines of the effort to challenge the unlawful deployment of the National Guard across this country. We took legal action to stop the deployment of National Guard troops from South Carolina to police Washington, D.C., and challenged the deployment of the Tennessee National Guard to the city of Memphis. Bottom line, our litigation has proven to be effective and impactful, securing meaningful protections for our communities and reinforcing the rule of law. But our work doesn't stop at the courtroom door. In the face of this historic overreach from the Trump-Vance administration, Democracy Forward is forcing actions into the sunlight. That includes the launching of hundreds of investigations and submitting thousands of public records requests. From the handling of the Epstein files to the alleged bribery of administration officials to the destruction of the White House East Wing to the president's scheme to pay himself $230 million of taxpayer dollars, your dollars. In addition to our litigation and other accountability efforts, we also provide important resources for the public use. First, to address the unprecedented attack on federal workers, we launched Civil Service Strong and Rise Up Federal Workers Legal Defense Network to connect federal workers with resources and free legal representation. We have a number of people's guides on our website covering everything from the Supreme Court to the civil service, and a recently launched Know Your Rights Hub, which is a collection of practical and multilingual resources from expert partner organizations to help individuals, families, workers, students, educators, and communities to understand your rights. The hub currently contains more than 60 resources across 6 issue areas: immigration enforcement, law enforcement encounters, protesting and First Amendment rights, transgender rights, abortion rights, voting rights, and rights for federal employees. The truth is, it is going to take a continued effort in the court as well as a continued effort by the people and communities and Congress, like our good friend, Congressman Paul Tonko, to stop this runaway executive branch. We know the flood the zone approach is overwhelming. However, now is not the time for rest. Democracy is not a spectator sport, and we need each and every one of you to get involved. So, what can we do? Well, joining this call is one important way to stay engaged. So, thank you to everyone who took time out of their evening and busy schedules to join tonight's conversation. We saw millions of people across this country and around the globe at the No Kings protest on Saturday. And if you're looking for other opportunities, Democracy Forward has launched Dinners for Democracy and Coffee for Change to create space and opportunities for people across the country to build community and engage in the work to protect and advance our democracy. You and your community are invited to be a part of this and to share the word with others. And we have tools to help get you started. Just go on our website and we'll be happy to provide you some resources. Again, thank you so much for joining this wonderful forum tonight. And thank you, Congressman Tonko, for having me. I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Megan. Thank you for the chronological rundown of all these cases and the importance of public sentiment, too. We have a question that has come in, and it's asking this. I feel like the courts move too slow. What's being done in the short term to keep the administration in check? And perhaps with that rundown of the court activities, there's some response you can offer?
Absolutely.
There?
So as cases proceed, they do take a long time. However, we are working with judges overnight to get some sort of short-term relief, which is where these temporary restraining orders come in, where you can get some sort of like blockage to some horrible action or unlawful action where it stops the administration from carrying out a function. And then in the short term. And then if we get a preliminary injunction, that means it stops during the whole case. Now the case will continue, but at least the action from the administration will be halted as the case proceeds the whole time. So these can happen overnight when we go and file a case, and it can come down within 24 hours, 48 hours. So this happens relatively quickly. And so, yes, the court can move slowly, but these temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions happen rather quickly.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I'm reminded too, right, that because of the court process and the cornerstone of our democracy being the justice for all, the judicial branch is critically important. And it was designed to give people a chance to appeal and the like, but never would we have imagined this sort of situation. And yeah, the expedition of these, expediting all of the court efforts would be nice, but we're working it from what I hear as strongly as we can. We have a question also as to what is the most effective action we as individual citizens can take right now to defend democracy. Well, to begin with, just this past Saturday, there's a good example, but so much misinformation and disinformation that is shared by this administration. They have literally lied about many situations out there. And so I think we can be verification teams. I'm doing what I can to challenge their misinformation within the legislative branch, working to make certain we bring truth to the forefront, doing special order hours in the House, bringing that to the committees on which I serve, and bringing it to the community so that people can further develop their own verification effort. I think that's important. Email chains where people can inform neighbors, friends, family about what you've discovered and encouraging them to get out there and do likewise. Voter registration signups, getting people to the polls later this year or for primaries in June will be very, very important. But raising your voices, because I have seen where we, for instance, with the Epstein files, had a motion to discharge, which is a fancy name for saying we can push a bill to come, require a bill to come to the floor for a vote with enough signatures. And we did that, driving it from the Democratic caucus. But we needed, of course, we're not in the majority, we needed some Republicans to sign on. That happened because of the public pushing those representatives, saying this is an issue that we want addressed. So release of those Epstein files. Now, of course, implementation of that legislation is what we're onto. But, I'm reminded of President Lincoln's quote about public involvement. Public sentiment is so important. With it, and nothing can fail. Against it, nothing can succeed. And so the role of the public here, back to the times of President Lincoln, I think that quote resonates more powerfully today in this given moment of this administration denying the rule of law, denying the Constitution, going forth and, undoing so many measures for which we fought for decades. It speaks to the need for public input and outcry. And I think the momentum established by the No Kings effort needs to be maintained. It needs to be maintained in our communities and beyond. And we're those agents, all of us working together. Anything that you would add to that, Megha?
No, you were spot on, Congressman. I think your voice is the most important thing in mobilizing and staying in community and gathering with one another, and absolutely working as a community is the most important thing that you can do right now. Your agency and free will and your ability to vote is something that they cannot take away from you. So absolutely continue to do that.
Right. I would encourage, if anyone has comments, it doesn't have to be in the form of a question. If there's any comments encouraging us or informing us and, offering some sort of creative efforts that we can do, they're certainly welcome. So another question that we've received is, what can we do to get the attention of Republicans? They have the power to stop this. Trump is destroying the United States, and the Republicans will only destroy their own party. I couldn't agree more. There are many who, in private conversation, in response to this question, offer their concerns, but not yet, moving forward as I would hope they would. They cower, they bend the knee to this administration, to this president, at a time when I think they're basically relinquishing the power of the people, which is entrusted in those legislators, the closest to the people, to speak truth to power. And they are not exercising that legislative power, which is to serve, as defined by our framers, as a check and balance. And so I think it's important for us to get their attention by sharing with them the public sentiment, the either inequities of the situation, the unfairness, the outright breaking from the Constitution or from law, or in cases where they're doing rule changes. For instance, in the Department of Justice, while it may not be a legislative fiat that they're embracing, rather an administrative fiat, we want to take that effort to do these reforms in the rules applied to the Department of Justice, for example. And when we find out that exercise, share it with the public, to be those voices out there that ignite people by offering information on how they would really dumb down a situation where cases can be easily faulty cases. Frivolent cases can easily get through the process with some of these rule changes. So informing one another and encouraging people to put pressure onto these Republicans that, this question obviously is concerned about, they need to hear from us, and to make certain that outcry is extremely loud and directed toward what they can do to make a difference here. Any other thoughts on that, Megha?
No, spot on, Congressman.
Okay. So if you folks have any questions or comments, we're still open to hear from those who may want to share their concerns. I know there have been questions about attempting to make certain the November elections are safe from fraud, and working with our counterparts in state government. That still, while the president would like to nationalize the elections, states play the key role here. From a party that supports states' rights, it's somewhat awkward and ironic that they want to take that responsibility and authority from the states and provide it to the national government. It tells me that they're desperate. They know that they're in trouble with these midterm elections, and so they'll do anything to try and weaken the efforts of those who are opposed to their efforts in Washington. But I think it's again a time for us to deal with the best experts, which the House caucus is doing, the Democratic caucus, engaging the best constitutional attorneys that can provide expertise and advice, making certain that we make every effort to allow for everyone who is able to vote, and to deny the efforts to suppress the vote. This whole effort with the Save America Act would deny primarily women and make it more difficult for them. There are demographics that they want to go after, people of color, go after the female population. They're worried about those segments of the voting population, and so are doing everything to try and suppress that area of activity. I think it's important for us, again, to speak out, to let them know we know what's in the bill, we know what's behind the effort, and that we're going to keep pushing people and informing people. Again, I was so impressed with the work that was done for the motion to discharge on the Epstein files, where an effort was achieved with a number of signatures that were required, including a handful of Republicans, that made that vote come to the floor. And now we're going to continue to work on those Epstein files being released by making certain that every effort is made to have it fully implemented and make certain the president does not break the law that he signed. Remember, in this just short past history, he was against the whole release. You could tell there was a cover up. But when it became apparent that so much pressure was coming on United States House of Representative colleagues and on United States senators, he was the hero and stepped up and said, you must pass this bill, thinking it'll go away if he signs it. No, now we're going to continue to push for implementation of that bill, which I think is critically important to make certain that this cover up that they're attempting is not allowed to happen. Any other questions? Okay, we have another one for what recourse is there if SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, rules against birthright citizenship?
I'm happy to take that on.
Sure.
Like, okay. So we are looking at all possible angles here. Our team is preparing for, a multitude of options that can come down here. But I think, whatever happens, there's some leeway for us to, try different potential cases. And so we have some different strategies mapped out. That's all I can, unfortunately share right now, but we are preparing for different scenarios here. And so that is something, as we move forward, rest assured there are people that are even smarter than I am and are preparing for as we move forward the next few months. So we'll see how things play out. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court is a bit unpredictable, as we have seen.
Yeah.
But
and it just seems that there's just such an onslaught of distraction, all sorts
Right.
of efforts they're making to occupy one's time. But I think it's important for us to go after every bit of these efforts. There are ways to divide the tasks and make certain that people do the background information, and to build the case. For some of these things, we're already developing an agenda in the caucus, should the House flip, and we're going to work to the finish line and beyond, getting over that finish line and flip the House. But we're not standing still. We're doing all sorts of recommended improvements to legislation that would make certain that some of these loopholes through which they are operating are closed, and that there's a more fair outcome, and we're learning from these situations and make certain that we don't have a repeat of this challenge to our democracy.
Absolutely.
We have a question, this one from Lorraine, I believe. Is Democracy Forward working with Move On, Indivisible, and or No Kings, or are you uniquely separate?
They are our partner organizations. And so when I say partner organizations, we all collaborate with one another and we stay in touch and figure out ways we can, partner on different events and such. So we all are connected with one another and we work together to figure out like what events we can be a part of. And yes, so we are constantly in touch and working together. It's the pro-democracy community is what we call it.
Yeah. It's interesting how many perspectives are coming into play. And what I thought was exciting about the No Kings rally on Saturday as I joined in the activities was, and it's true with the other No Kings rallies that I attended, and maybe even our town halls, there's a sweep over the age demographics from very young kids, I'd say pre-high school, up to I heard of 90-year-olds who are out there fighting for their grandchildren's world. So this has been terrific. It's a selfless effort by so many. I had a 50-plus-year-old tell me, I've never done this before. And my daughter wanted to get engaged with me. And we went and marched on Saturday. And so it's built a wonderful bit of energy and enthusiasm and a lot of frankness. You know, this is taking it right to my colleagues and me. And I would suggest that throughout the course of history of nearly 250 years, and that's a big number that we're shooting for, let's maintain it. In our lowest, most challenged times, it was the public. You know, I'm old enough to have remembered the civil rights movement of the 60s. And the people took politicians where they needed to be. And they drove the exercise. They drove the outcry, the multiracial response to civil rights, and the forcefulness of their passion to make a difference drove politics where it needed to be. And so we're in that critical moment again. And this one could be very cleansing. But you know, as I heard over the weekend with the reporting, and some indicated, look, with these No King's efforts, it doesn't stop after you went home from the protest. You go home and you work your community, you work your family, you work your neighbors, and you reach out to all ages, and you start developing those email chains or postcard efforts. And you know, we all believe for people to give them of their time on a cold, windy day last Saturday in my district. I mean, wicked cold wind. They believe. And if you believe, I know you're going to go back and not let the momentum sink. You will push that momentum and will go forward and continue to build community response, and a lot of people making friends out there over this whole effort. Anyone else? So, look, I think we're done. We're not getting any more notes coming my way, but let me just say the people hold the shield when defending their democracy. And, you know, we've had the assignment, we have the passion, we have the voices, we have truth on our side. So let's bring truth to power as we continue in the battle. Let's go out there. We've got a democracy to save, and let the people hold the shield when defending. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for sharing your evening with us.
Thanks.
Thank you again, Mega.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you all. Have a great night.